Here is a golden advice I like to present it to you as paper makers. I'm going to read it for you. To solve major problems, which we have major problems in the paper industry as you already know, work at one problem at a time. Each problem which you solve makes a rule which serves afterwards to solve other problems. The headbox approach piping systems is the starting point. That's really my experience. If you invite me, for example, a problem at the winder, let us say the winder fiber orientation or breaks at the winder or holes or whatever it is, I'm not going to look to the winder. I look to the headbox first. That's where you start from. You have to clean that area first and be sure that's the right way. Once you solve that problem, you really and clear it up, then you go to other problems and life will become much easier than that. That's the message which I'm trying to give it to you as paper makers. Nature taught us something which really exemplified in that statement. If two theories predict phenomena to the same accuracy, then the one which is simpler and economical is the better one. That's really, I picked it up from nature laws. Nature is very simple but powerful. Nature doesn't use two theories simultaneously to get the same results. The most efficient way is what nature does. And what I mean by that is if somebody walks in to your mill and said, well, you have problem in the head box, change that head box. Well, that's a nice idea. Everybody may be like that. Well, how do you know that your head box cannot take the most advantage out of it? And that's exactly what I'm doing. The problem can be very simple, either, as I said, in the process or in the design or combination. And most of the time is in the process. If the design is wrong, then with few modifications, things can be done right. That's what I mean by that. You have to look to the economics of your operation and take the right decision. There is always a notion in the paper industry and the floor. They always say, well, paper making is an art. That's really half truth, which, when we say art means that it lacks science. And this statement just try to push you to the scientific principles, and I'm going to read it for you that you can absorb it also. If paper making is looked upon by some to be an art, then like all arts, it is equipped by diligent and regular practice. We already know that. But scientific approaches are the shortest path to get you what you want with least resistance and investment. Once you know the rules of the science, that's the shortest cut instead of the trial and error approach. And I think, I'm going to give you a story about Gauss. Gauss was a scientist, mathematician in the 18th century, late 18th century, and he was one of the greatest mathematicians probably of all time and so on. And when he was a young boy, the story said he's a German, the teacher wants to keep the students quiet, so he asked the students to count from 1 to 100, in a sequential order to keep them busy. But Gauss raised his hand right up. He said, well, I have the answer. The teacher didn't believe him. He just, sit down. He kept insisting. Well, I know the answer. And of course, he knew the answer. He was able to find out the shortest cut to get, the answer to, of course, to the teacher. And that's what I'm trying to say here. Once you know, the problem and you solve it by the scientific principles, it just avoid you the agony of the trial and error approach, which most of the time maybe you cannot reach it ultimately. That's what I mean by that. Now you discover the passion of the scientific principles, which I'm trying to present to the paper industry. And I'm going again to read that statement for you, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. He who loves practice without theory is like the sailor who boards without a rudder or compass and never knows where he may cast. Calculation of the jet-to-wire speed ratio accurately is a classic example. And what I mean by that, when I explain, the peak of the optimum as far as sheet formation or strength properties or other properties you want to do, that optimum had to be calculated scientifically. If you don't know where that optimum is, you actually, like the sailor who doesn't have any compass or any rudder, he just try to fish, just going by trial and error approach. The scientific principles get you there with no or minimum capital investment and without the agony of trying to optimize your operation. That's what I mean by that statement. This is my last quotation, which I like also to take care of it. Sometimes I made recommendations and people listen very carefully, but then they most of the time, of course, depending on the management, they do it, and some they don't. And a person, I put it at it, a person can be like a point, has position without magnitude. It's like a vector. A position, a president of a company or a president of a country or something, unless he does something for the benefit of his people, he just have a position. And there is a Chinese wisdom which really fits in that area. The Chinese wisdom says, cats like to eat fish, but hates to get wet. Well, if you really want to do something, you better go and do it. And most of the recommendations, I can say the ultimate of my recommendations are based on no or minimum capital investment. If you don't like it, you can return it back. But there is no harm that you can try any recommendations based on scientific principle. That's what I mean by that. Cats like to eat fish, but hates to get wet. If you wanted to do something, you better go and do it. That's what I mean by that.